be aware of that so that nobody has sticker shock, and so that people starting now start to understand what runway we're landing the plane on. So that's all I've got to say about that. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. I'm not going to try to fill the space because I'm not a DJ today. Here. Well, you can tell I was one once.
All right. Well, so I think what we're saying, Jack, is that we'll let this be a budget committee meeting and let it be informal.
Right.
No action will be taken because there's no quorum here for there to be board action taken. But we can make use of the time. We can still hear from Flora to give us some background in terms of what's being presented for preliminary budget work, and we can hear from each of the principals at a preliminary level, things they've been thinking about.
Right.
And if the interim superintendent has anything to add, that would be great as well. But that's it. It's informational, no action.
Well, that is the deal, and of course, with my colleagues on the Westminster Board, that's kind of what they do. They can't do a whole lot of action until next July, so they have informational meetings, period, to a great extent. All right. It is now 5 past, so I'm going to declare this a meeting of the budget committee of the board, and the budget committee is concurrent with the board itself, but it needs not but to consider matters and to start to do that work. We don't need to have a quorum. So that's what we're going. So I'm going to suggest that we will take public comments if there are any, but we will not. We're eliminating 4, which is the review and approval of minutes. We will take reports, but only within the constraint of our discussion tonight, which is 5. We will take off our agenda. This is without objection. The nature-based outdoor learning, which was something I was quite interested in. And we'll focus on budget planning. And I don't know, since I think the VTVLC thing would require action, or maybe not. We were trying to figure out if we're going to.
I got confirmation that Esser funds could be used for that, and
right.
so we have moved in that direction.
Okay, do you need anything from us?
No.
Then we can take VTVLC off the sheet in any case. And so we'll have director's comments at the end. So that, without objection, that's the road we're taking. And is that acceptable to my Westminster colleagues? All right, so officially that's what we're doing here. Okay, let's do this. Who on administration of the 4 of you wants to talk budgets? And again, I've said that we are going to, and I want to emphasize to both my principals that this is not a cross-examination. We're not defending budgets. We're just getting an understanding of what, sort of broad outlines, staffing, big projects that need to get done if there are any, things that, the things that are going to really torque this. I always say about 80% of the budgets are pretty hardwired and are dependent on things like contracts. But within the rest of that, what are the things that you want to do? And with that, and since we've got a Westminster Elementary School, can the folks at FACT see the screen that you have up?
So everyone can see them. They can.
They can. Okay. So credit to the graphics department. And we'll move on. You want to start us off, Liz?
Sure, yeah. So if you go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. This is our projected class grade level size, and anticipating 153 students next year, which is slightly less than we have right now. We have 160 in the building right now. But of course, this changes until the first day of school. And then we're welcoming in, that's our pre-K estimated enrollment and our 7th and 8th tuitioning enrollment next year. And then if you go down the next slide, which I believe is staffing.
By the way,
Follow me for that.
ask any questions, including, I can't read that, or what does that say, is fine. If you can't see it, nobody else can either.
I know, I'm sorry.
Go to the slideshow.
Lee, did you have a question on this?
No, I was just.
So what's on the
I was afraid
slideshow?
I'm gonna click out just seeing how many
Can you click
classrooms
slideshow?
there are altogether.
All
Up
right.
in the red bar, Andy.
12,
Like from start.
K through
No.
6.
We gotta write that out.
Right here?
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
Awesome.
That helps.
Oh,
Those are
okay.
our
Yeah.
anticipated numbers. So we'll be looking at the same amount of classroom teachers next year as we have now. There might be some shifting of grade level to meet the numbers in each grade, but we'll have 12 classroom teachers as we have right now. And then this is our staffing for next year. It is mostly the same. I do want to propose bringing back our full-time librarian position, which we had a full-time librarian up until last year. And that position encompasses both library science, tech integration within classrooms around research, the learning garden, supporting teachers with outdoor classroom, and then if we had her full-time, she would be able to get into more STEAM efforts. So that is my hope.
So we're getting into more what?
STEAM,
Oh, Steve.
yeah. These are our capital improvements, and I just put hopefully an Esser 3 next to them. I'm not sure. The roof installation for West and the east side of this building. This year we'll be working on the small portion by the gym entrance. It's currently leaking into the classroom, so that is urgent to be fixed. But the west roof needs to be replaced, and correction on this side of the building.
Yeah, quick question about that. The roof repair and installation at West has actually been in the budget for years. So I don't know why we haven't done it.
Yeah, I think that's, from my understanding, this is what I've been told, is that on 2020, they had it out to bid and they were going to do it, but maybe the bid was put out incorrectly. And so then it delayed the process of getting the bid. And so then by the time they could do that, COVID happened and we were shut down. And then the money wasn't then I don't see a budget line that would include that. And then of course, prices went up incrementally. And so now we're looking at a much larger cost
That
than
explains it.
would have cost in 2019.
And what we're being told by the state, when we talk about ESSER funds, just because a lot of infrastructure stuff, is like, if the roof was bid back in 2019 at $100,000, you're probably talking that it's doubled, if not tripled.
Yeah.
Just because of cost of materials and labor, and then everything is being pushed out. So like, if it's something you want to get done this year, you will be lucky if we can get it next year.
And this
So-
is an accurate bid. So the 100,000 is accurate now. That's not what
Right,
it
so,
was.
yeah, so thank you, that's good to know.
That one of the things we would want, I'm going to be involved with this next year. The thing you would want would be to the extent that we can get bids locked in, that would be a thing to do. Because that way, even if it turns out that it drops into a following year's budget, if you have a binding contract and you have a completion guarantee, and that's a separate, by the way, piece of paper you need, because we've had problems with that in the past, where it's called bonding, performance bond.
Okay.
You want a performance bond. It almost wrecked this district when we didn't have one once, so I pass that along for your,
Yeah. We do have we wanted to get some figures to know what number we were even dealing with. It's my understanding, Flora, that amount this large, you would have to collect multiple bids?
Yeah.
That needs to be.
And is that same with this grant situation? You can't bypass that with the grant? Okay, so we can work on, I mean, with the board's approval, we can work on that and then secure something? I mean, I would love to, because I know when we spoke with the one quote that we have, he said that if we signed it, then they could start purchasing materials now or lock in pricing of materials so that if it goes up, you're not paying a higher
I
price.
think that could be looking for following approval by actually both boards, just because I think as a courtesy, we want to have both boards on the record in favor of the numbers you come up with. Like I said, I think we should be looking to try to do, and looking at both of you guys, and to Jim DeVille, wherever you may be, because he is your clerk of the works, say you want to get locked-in commitments. Now, you want a third-party performance bond, because this gets really weird right now, and you don't want to get screwed up with that, because you almost did with the middle school years ago. And so with those caveats, I think probably want to come back to all of us.
I would love to move forward with that.
How
That's
do
great.
you guys feel? This really, I'm outnumbered 3-1. What do you guys want to do?
Well, that makes sense. The 100,000 includes both buildings. It's both the
Yes.
roof and the repairs over here. So you want to get those
Yeah.
differentiated.
So a question for you guys. This is, the classic radioactive question. What's your vision about the building in West-West, and is it you guys want to be holding that? Are you going to try to get the program that's been put off because of
It's not
COVID?
put off. It's active.
done.
It's
All right.
vibrant.
Okay.
It's going on.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate because I know it comes up every year. You'll have this question at
Of
town
course,
meetings, so
of
just want to
course.
make sure y'all are on with that.
You just don't imply that it's not happening. It's happening.
Then I stand, then for the record, I stand completely corrected and abashed that I even brought it up.
So a couple of things with Esser funds, just to keep everyone, so it's in the front of our heads. Everything with Esser has to relate back to how there's a COVID connection. So that's the first piece. Obviously, if your roof is falling and leaking, we can make an argument that, there's a COVID there because kids need to come to school and we need them to be safe, right? So I mean, we just gotta always have that in our lens. The other piece is we have to do a construction application. So even with the information you have right now, Liz, we can start that construction and get concept approval. So that's the 7-tier thing. So
Right.
we could take the information that Liz has on the roof things, get it in there, get the concept approval so that it gets that ball rolling a lot faster. The third part of it is that when you're using federal funds and purchasing things, there have to be assurances that, because the items belong to the federal government. And so part of it is just understanding that, like, what was put was, like if we put in here like mini splits, technically, if Westminster were to sell this building to the town type of thing, we have to alert the federal government, and the federal government could come in and ask for their stuff back. So it's just one of the things to think about. Just those are the three big things they've kind of really keep pushing when we have the conversations with them, because it's people think, oh, I get this money, I'm going to invest it, but it's government money, so the government can come take their stuff back. They won't, but
Two questions on that.
Yeah.
One, in terms of, I don't know how it's going to work in the West-West building, but for this facility, if you've got exhaust system and you've got a roof issue, the classic solution is you've just found where you're going to vent your exhaust system, and that's how you resolve that problem. And that would be my suggestion in the spec, because that way it becomes, you have to fix the roof in order to vent the building, and there you go. A parochial question. I know we're doing the Westminster facilities, but when we get to the Grafton facilities, technically, the facilities are owned by the town, and we will need to know if we need to get them back in order to qualify for any of that.
No, I think we'll just need to work with the town to make sure the town understands that they have to sign those same assurances.
Okay, and I have a couple bodies there that are eager to be helpful. We'll move on. All right, thank you.
I had another, sorry, Charlie.
Well, sorry, just, most of this list is kind of, it's repairing or restoring or whatever. Is there any discussion about wholly new things, like more outdoor learning space or something like that, or?
I don't have that in this.
No, I wonder, has that come up in any conversations? This is the opportunity to do that, if there's a desire or feeling that you could use it in either school.
Where that's coming up right now, Charlie, is through the Esser discussions, and, I'm a member, as is Priscilla and Lambert, as board members of the committee or the team that Andy has put together. And there is actually specific support in two ways. Professional development support for teachers who don't have the experience opening the door and going outdoors, and the kind of spaces and places, materials category is also
I see, so
in there.
that's, that conversation's going on somewhere else.
So it is, so it need not be here.
That's fine.
And those are appropriate costs for Esser, they're COVID related, and they need not be long-term in our budget. They're, kind of do it, get the
Sustainable.
teachers prepared and familiar with all of that. And secondly, create those places and spaces with resources needed, materials that are needed. So,
Good, it's happening, fine.
yeah, it's happening.
One caveat on that. We are trying, and this will really be your call as a group, to whether you want to do this or not. We're trying very hard to encourage all boards to have what we call unified budgets. That means that taxpayers see what they owe and where their money's coming from, but they also see the
Right.
larger picture.
Right.
They see where all the money's coming from and where all that money's going. So to the extent that when we get down to nailing down the final budget, we will want to have at least swag numbers in those boxes of some sort.
Yeah.
With a note that this is money coming, this is what we estimate we're going to need, this is where we estimate the money's coming from, and the impact to taxpayers is zero. But to have that language, yeah.
And then just to add on to what Cheryl was saying, Charlie, so when we're going to be putting a survey out to the public and the communities, looking at ways we can improve and design new things using ESSER 3 funds. And so one of those, and then that committee that Cheryl was talking about, will begin to start looking at, if we feel like building, an outdoor auditorium. I'm just making something up off the top of my head. And that, out here on the grounds would be appropriate. It would allow for social distancing and nature-based learning and stuff like that. Then those funds, but that we're going to solicit that kind of feedback from the community of what we might do, and then look at how you can add that on, and then what the board and what the school just has to remember is you build those things, right? At some point the money goes away and then you've got to maintain. So you just want to think about those things. But the other big thing is, like, if you wanted to redesign this room to be what we would call a maker space, where kids can come in and explore and do crazy things, and you've got curved walls and movable walls and, really outside the box thinking, learning, that's all part of ESSER and can be incorporated into it.
So, follow-up question, what's the timeline on that? 'Cause I had understood that the deadlines were coming up fast, but clearly not.
So right now, I didn't mean to hijack this, I apologize, but we
It's
just learned,
useful.
so.
We need it.
So the ESSER 3 funds haven't been fully even released yet, because the state has to get their plan approved by the federal government. And so we can't even submit anything into ESSER 3. We can see how much money we have and stuff like that, but we can't go ahead and start writing strategies until the state gets their plan approved. And we just learned today from the secretary that the plan was not approved. And that is, as he put it, very typical, that usually on the first run, the state plans are not approved because, you're whittling down. Like when I submit a grant, it usually always gets kicked back because there's something wrong with it, right? So the state needs to go back and tweak some things, but they are the November-ish kind of, time frame is when they're hoping that it's going to be open, that we can start really doing it. So we're a little bit behind where some other districts are, just given the circumstances of the start of the year here. But we had a survey out there eliciting some feedback. We got some good feedback, and then we're going to be publishing some more pointed kind of like where people could see us really targeting those dollars. So.
Speak to the November 1 deadline for Esser 2 amendments.
Yeah, okay,
'cause
so
that's
thank you.
relevant too.
So again, there's 3 Esser grants. Esser 1 came out back right as we opened school back up last year, and that was about recovery, and it was really targeted on getting the schools sanitized and whatnot, and that was off the top of my head, $1.5 million or something like that. And that sunsets September 22. So that grant's going to be done pretty fast here. We've been spending on it. We've got some dollars we can go back and spend, which we'll continue to work on. The second big bucket was Esser 2 funds, and that was about 5.8 million. And we needed to finalize the application, which means account for how we want to spend the dollars by November 1st. And so what we've done is gone through and projected out over the next 3 years, because that grant sunsets September of 23.
Right.
And so we projected out how we might spend those funds with carrying on the summer programming that we did this last year and continuing that for the next 2 years type of thing. Looking at the nature-based stuff, the outdoor classroom, doing some other repairs at some other buildings and building all of that in. And then, so we've submitted that grant now. And like I said, I'm anticipating it's going to get kicked back with some questions on clean this language up or do this. And so, answer this. And so we'll do that. And then the Esser 3 funds, or ARP it's called, they sunset on September of 24. And so they continue out. And the way it builds is Esser 1 had a very specific cause, Esser 2 had a specific cause, but could include anything from Esser 1. And then Esser 3 can include anything from Esser 1 and 2. So we're able to continue some of the same programmings and things like that. So it's a lot of money for our district. We can do a lot of great things and really support teachers. We're really looking at trying to use the dollars not so much to put people into places, because you own people afterwards or you have to get rid of them. And if they're doing great work, it's hard to say, let's get rid of them. But looking at infrastructure, but also looking at how do we give teachers the tools, because our teachers, we have great teachers. How do we give them the tools to really work with our students and help them improve their learning? And that's going to be our real big piece, is really investing in some of the stuff you guys were talking about earlier, to be very honest with you, really investing in our teachers and their education and getting them able to work with any kid at any time in any environment. We want to be able to, if we've got to pivot again to remote learning, we don't want teachers to stress. We want to be able to do it on a fly. If we want to come up with creative ways of connecting with kids, that's what we want to do. And teach, and we've got the teachers and the staff that can do it. We just gotta get them. We gotta bring it all together. So.
And we pick up some academic credits from the process.
Yes.
All right, got it.
So a little more for Charlie
Yeah.
then. What Liz is presenting is really specific to this Westminster budget without all of this other stuff that Andy's been talking about. So it's helpful for you to have this larger context.
And then just the last couple of things, just so we're fully transparent with all the Esser stuff, is that We also were awarded an ARP Esser special education grant, so it's targeted at students with disabilities. That was about $97,000.
And that's reassuring, because that was really the place where it was obvious that the gaps had been the biggest.
Yeah, and then.
That's the homeless, don't it?
Yep, and then we were just awarded a homeless ARP grant, which is about $71,000 to target our homeless population. And again, these grants are projected out through, the special ed grant is out through September of '23, so those funds can be spent over that
Are
time.
those across the SU or are they district specific?
Those are SU specific,
That's what I
yeah,
thought.
across
Okay.
SU. And then the homeless grant is spread out through September of '24. So, so we've got the monies that can be, we don't have to spend it all like tomorrow. We'll have a planning time and an application deadline. But like the special ed one is, I believe it got pushed out to December. And then I think the homeless one will get pushed out. It'll be around December because we just got it. But we'll have to kind of put our monies in buckets for things we want to do. So, but folks are actively coming up with some great strategies. So.
All right. Why don't we continue on to the next slide?
Just a quick
There we go.
question on that work too, is that, Andy, when you spoke about Jack, when you spoke
Yeah.
about making sure you have the performance bond and the lock-in commitments and the construction application, is that work that we are expected to do here, like Wade and I, or is that a Jim DeBell? Is he taking that on as Director of Operations? Should we send that?
Taking it on, yes, so.
So we'll email him about that and let him know.
We'll follow up afterwards.
Okay,
I just wanted
perfect.
to make sure I brought those up.
Okay, great. And just following along more of the Esser, the additional mini splits, we have mini splits in multiple classrooms, but there are still spaces that do not. And so we wanted to add into those spaces. We have a slide that we'd like to install that was purchased through Esser 1. And we are not going to use the funds this year, our local budget funds, to install it. So we'd like to do that next year. And in our boiler room, there are 2 pumps that are on their last leg.
Yes.
And we're hoping to at least replace and rebuild 1 pump next year. It's likely we'll have to do.
Go at the same time.
Yeah.
So, the idea is you're gonna get one replaced. Revisit that with us.
Well, I'm guessing that I'm going to have to replace 1 now, like this year, is what I'm concerned about. And I don't have $14,000 left in my budget, but I might have 7 to do 1. So that's my thought process there. And then technology, we're just going to upgrade as needed. Nothing.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
But isn't that also in the Esser funding, or is it? I'm asking.
So this is where it gets a little funky. So we actually took it out of this, so I don't know that's actually in there.
Out of my slide, you don't think this is necessary?
No, I don't think.
Because it'll be all covered by Esser.
Well, I think that was a budgetary cut locally that was decided.
Oh, okay,
Maybe take that out.
okay.
But we are looking to try and use Esser funds based around technology and our ability to do remote learning and interact with students and stuff like that.
Right.
So we are building in, I don't know if it'll be Promethean boards, but we're building in interactive ways. So it might be large screen TVs, it might be projectors, it might be, tomorrow, it was smart boards before, now it's Promethean boards, it might be something else, so.
Whatever's appropriate.
Right.
On this point, and maybe it's another screen in a minute, is remote points of presence have come up as an item in other rural communities where you've got isolated people who really were intermittently available.
And that's it, that was one of the things we wrote in there also.
Okay.
So like, whether they're MiFis or hotspots or and also improving our infrastructure here so we can do things, so.
All right, and there are there are a number of kind of Zoom Plus type of things that are specifically optimized for instructions. You can see everybody a little bit easier. You don't have to try to guess who's available on the screen and all that nonsense. But at least, I'm getting pulled into this for other reasons, but I'm seeing that this stuff is out there because of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Ricky's email is inundated on a daily basis. Mine is, 3 times, because I get forwarded Mr. Pratt's and Dr. Carey's, but it's like vendors are like, they've all hooked into this, and I know you guys probably get them too. It's like, we get all these different kinds of new.
If you ever need sort of like, tech evaluations in addition to Rick, or can do this fine, but I would just put my hand up and suggest that Jessa is another person who would,
Yeah. One of the
she's doing it
things,
for UMass, so she's probably good enough to do it for us.
one of the things Ricky's really talked to me about, and I've encouraged, is really building a 5-year tech plan, putting a committee together and of stakeholders, and really projecting out what are the SU needs for the next 5 years. And so we've got a plan. I always make the statement, if I win the lottery or get hit by the Twinkie bus, right? I mean, there needs to be a living document, a system in place that says this is the goals that we're working on. And also so we can budget, so the 2 pumps aren't going at the same time. We need to know, like, when our board's going to go, and they have a life expanded, and
You should have sunsetting for all.
yeah, and we're going to do a huge investment in interactive stuff here with using Esser funds, but we also know that the life expectancy is 7 to 10 years on some of this stuff, and
Right.
so if we're all here in 2023 or 2031, sorry, I guess we'll own it then. But if we're not, I guess we kick the bucket, down the road. But I mean, that's not fair. So
One of the things we started to do years ago, and then it just kind of died on the vine, was to have separate capital 10-year budget. And in that 10-year budget, you have, your life cycle for items, and you can do this because we did it for a couple of years through the state. Is you can put money into sinking funds to some extent so that you're not having to borrow and spend another 5, 10, 15% for an item that you could have paid cash for.
Yep.
And these are important things that we need to look at. Again, we're off subject.
Well, sorry. At some point, I don't have to ask this question now. I have a question about not just the technology, but the training of the teachers to use the technology. When do we get to talking about that? Because I'm sure it's.
And that's the piece where, that's what I'm talking about with the using ESSER funds in the professional development to build the teachers,
As long as that's in the.
that's the point. That's where we're gonna get our biggest bang for the buck. Yeah, we can build or buy a smart board, but then it becomes a really expensive coat rack.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what we want to avoid, or just a really expensive whiteboard. So we want people to be using them, and we want to use it smart. So we don't want to just go and say, we've got this windfall of cash, let's just buy all this technology. We want to be smart about it, and we want to be purposeful and make sure we're also not just bringing it all in, and we don't have the training. So we have to have a way of staggering it in so that teachers are learning as it's coming in. Because one of the big issues is, if we bring in 400 interactive boards and put them in classrooms, and we don't get the training for another 2 years, then we've just wasted 2 years.
Right, and
I was wondering, will there be into this study of the stuff that you've just said? Ricky will, presumably part of it is also, how do we use it? How do we make it effective?
Another thing we might want to think about with ESSER funds too are the 2 bathrooms on this wing of the school. That might be something that we want to think about.
Bathrooms don't vent very well.
No, there's not exhaust really in many of the bathrooms in the school, but
Air ventilation, that's the key.
okay.
That's the key.
Okay, perfect. This is the tuition overview for our 7th and 8th and preschool students. I did put in the budget lines that Flora presented or gave to me. I accounted for 2 extra students I don't know if the board is comfortable with adding that just for move-ins. But that's just because we have students moving into the area
Yeah.
and then we'll need to pay their tuition. So I just wanted to let the board know of that.
Before you move on, you've got two different numbers there. What's the deal? The first one says-
783.
You know what, I think I'm not sure, the 47 is accurate.
So not the first line. not the-
No, yeah.
And this is a huge reduction. It's more than $1 million in this year's budget. And we got hit, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, Elise, when we truly underestimated the number of 7th and 8th graders that would come in. We ended up we went over budget. It was a mess. So I'm actually cautious about our estimating how many kids might show up. I just am concerned about the fact that you're dropping it by actually more than half in
Yes,
terms
so-
of what's in this year's budget.
Yeah,
versus
right
what-
now, the students that we're aware of, both in school and homeschooling, would total 47.
Mhm.
And then I added 2 extra, but if the board would suggest something different.
Well, let's all think about it. I
Yeah,
just-
Yeah,
it was a
and
good
I
point.
think we need to also look at real estate trends.
Right.
We know we had a huge influx of folks moving to the Northeast, during the early times of the pandemic. My understanding is the real estate bubbles on the other side now, but that could also
Still
come
looking
back.
at it.
So we'll take a good look at that.
Yeah, that worries me.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Because we've had at least people we anticipated coming and staying, in some cases coming and not staying.
Yep.
And so it is all hard. It's a wild card.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Definitely, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, is someone with a calculator, can they double check the 47 times 16, 842? Seems like it should come out closer to 17,000 times 50 would be 800.
Yeah,
Seems like it would
just
be-
picking up that much. So.
Can I go off on that?
2 times 47.
Yeah, the-
I got 791. Oh. that is-
Yeah, that is off.
Oh, yeah, because why would it be,
right.
that's not accurate. Yeah.
This is only a committee meeting.
Good thing.
But good thing to catch those types of things because they
At
show
least.
up later
Right.
and you don't want to have to do
So
that.
really, you're talking 791,574.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take out this.
And so that's not as
Yeah.
big
You
a
can't- you
reduction
can't-
as I was worried about. Yeah.
He's projecting.
I'm projecting, so.
Never mind then.
All right.
So you want this first one will come out, this top one with the
Yeah.
50?
Yeah.
And then we'll adjust
Edit
this,
that.
we'll
Yeah.
edit this,
All
so.
right. Better. Moving along.
And then, yeah, those are salaries. How much? I don't know, Laura, did you need to speak to salaries at all? I don't
So,
know.
just for the salaries, FY '22 information is actually the same as FY '23. The difference is that in FY '22, when we had budget meetings and we approved the budgets, we didn't have yet the teachers' negotiations. So, the numbers that you see there is what was actually approved.
These
But
are
it's
all-
not the current salary, so the current salaries is what we have right now in FY '23 column.
Okay.
So we are expecting that amount to be
That's the
approved.
1.5% bump in most
Yeah,
cases.
that we had for
No,
FY '22.
Now, I want to just caution all colleagues.
Mhm.
We are in the process of negotiating salaries. We are also, there are some expectations based on the rate of pay that's occurring in our neighborhood. And we have some expectations around cost of living. I don't know if you saw the amount that cost of living has been bumped in Social Security checks. But those numbers are probably closer to what we're going to be looking at than not. So I would just say if we have budget lines based on 1.5%, and there's ways we can deal with this.
We do have a line for
Yeah,
contingency.
well, contingency is a funny thing, and we need to make certain that whatever that line is one that's coordinated fairly heavily with the negotiations team, because they're going to know what they're anticipating. And we need to have that be, hopefully we have all the contracts negotiated before January, because I want to make sure that we have.
If
that
so,
will-
then we don't need a contingency,
Well,
right?
this is the point, but you're having it mostly as a fluid line, but it's on us to try to get this nailed down earlier rather than later. And I would just suggest that we have communities that are going to expect this to be as close to level funded as possible, but there's going to be sticker shock around salaries, I think. And if schools are having lower enrollment, that money's not going to come from the state, it's going to come from local taxpayers. And if you have a 3% reduction in staff, a 3% reduction in students, and therefore a 3% reduction in money coming from the state. And at the same time, you have, let's pick a number out of the air, make it ridiculous, 5% increase in salaries, you see where the problem lies. And so I would ask you all, as you make revisions in this, be thinking about if you've got a 3% reduction in students and therefore money from the state, if there are things you can do staffing wise, or, so I heartily disapprove cuts to maintenance and stuff as a way to get through it, because you end up with buildings that look really bad after a while. But just keep that in mind. All right, I've said my I'm finished channeling Jim McAuliffe for 5 minutes now, so good.
So for benefit-wise, last basketball meeting on last Friday, they did mention that we should calculate for increases in health insurance for at least a 10%.
Yeah.
That will impact the SU, and a 2% that is going to impact each employee.
What
So
happened?
that's the calculation that we have there for FY22, how much it was for our benefits, and for
That's
FY23,
disgusting. Okay, thank
the
you.
estimated. Yeah, not good. And then for the miscellaneous, I highlighted in yellow the adjustments that Liz has done.
Is there a way to make that at all bigger so that those of us who brought the wrong set of glasses can figure out what I'm looking at?
I'm not sure we can make that
I think we're
bigger.
just gonna have to talk about that last page a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through it right now, I don't think. Let's go ahead and.
Do you want me to talk about it now? I
Brief-
can, yeah.
Okay.
So the deductions are just based off of our projected enrollment and tuitioning. And then from recommendations from Ricky is around our tech needs next year. I also took out the 2 lines for the vehicle, if the vehicle is going to be going to the SU. And then we used to pay for our oil and wood chips through one line. So that is now separated.
Okay.
So we have an accurate number of what our oil costs to run the building. And then you'll see at the bottom, there's a wood chip line. So that's an accurate number of what our wood chips are projected to cost. And the other ones are just the increases. There's a small increase in student activities because it used to be 2 separate lines we used to have a food line for student activities and a student activities line, and they're just merged per Flora's recommendation. There used to be an art supply line, and that was a clerical error, and it was recoded as COVID supplies. So we lost our art supply line mid-March last year. It switched, and then it didn't present itself this year. So I just would like to add that line back in as a need to fund both our art program and our Studio Y program. A small increase in operation of buildings, and then a small increase in the regular ed general supplies to reflect just current need.
We were buying oil at the SU level at one point. That's not still a thing. We were buying it locally.
I think we're buying it locally.
That was we were trying to, at one point, we were trying to get stuff from Dead River or Sunset, and probably be unified. Maybe that just never happened.
I'm not sure which one is the name of the
Well,
company that
I
does
think
our
part of the
oil.
issue was you have a funky tank here,
But
and that made it difficult to have the people deliver it, that were delivering it to high school and maybe the middle school.
I can ask Jim Bell to look into it. I'm not aware of that.
I
so-
would, simply just because that it would be,
Yeah.
it might be a way of saving, some nominal amount at least.
So if you add up that bottom, that right-hand column, it's roughly 500,000. I mean, give or take some change. That's good. I mean, how does that compare to the rest of the budget? If you just take the yellows and minus the grays, it's somewhere around 500,000. So
Especially
that's a big chunk of money, isn't it?
Right.
Down, which is good.
Yeah.
So where does that, does that get spent on other things, or have we reassigned that money, or is it just we're cutting back on on a bloated budget from last year, or what's the impact of that?
From my understanding, it's just a deduction that wasn't.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
It wasn't particularly put to you, Liz.
Oh, okay.
It's just out into the ether. Just my education. That's a big chunk of money that we're not going to spend that year.
We also have to put this in the context of the actual budget. The budget tends to run about 5.3 for Westminster. So you don't have the whole picture yet. You don't
No.
see what the issue,
Yeah.
what we're paying for taxpayer dollars to the supervisory union is not shown here. So whether it's busing or,
So, yeah, so
special
here,
ed.
this is just the operation of this building, like of what that cost is,
Right.
and
So we have a
then-
lot more to put together.
Well, I understand, but it seems like a large number.
Well, you're right.
Seems like good news. It's
Well, that's basically saying that a lot of districts, especially small ones, when they do 7 to 8 tuition, they're all,
That's where it
Yeah.
really is. It's the lower numbers for early ed and the, projection of maybe fewer 7th and 8th graders.
Right.
That's where the money
well,
is.
and what I'm going to tell you is that number is the least controllable thing you have in your budget.
Exactly.
Because you have some smoothing that occurs for your numbers of students and what state pays you. So if you have a big jump, they don't pay as much as you'd like. And if you have a big decrease, they give you some cushioning. But when it comes to 7th and 8th, that you pay that. And with small schools, that number can vary that much, or actually more. Grafton's used to vary by about 70% year to year. It was just, it was just nuts.
Crazy.
And it's if you're looking for things that are, that you lose when we shrink these districts down, one of them is the smoothing effect of having a big district, or relatively big district. And now you're seeing this, at least here. 2 years from now, when it jumps back up, you'll all see a number that's horrible in the other direction, I'm sure.
I was thinking to some extent, there are concerns about falling enrollment are taken care of by also falling numbers of 7th and 8th grade kids that have to be paid for elsewhere.
But the problem you have is if you got one teacher in 6th grade, and you got 16 kids 1 year, and you got 14 kids the next year, it still costs you the same amount of money to pay that. You're not gonna get a five, you're not gonna take 8% off that teacher's salary because they got less students, And that's one of the, but this comes up a lot, Charlie, and it's good to educate the public about, is that, when you have increasing enrollments, I always said you could actually justify having an advertising line to encourage people from New Jersey and Connecticut to move up here. It would pay for itself, because the reality is that you get money that if you have more money, if you have classes of 20, there's a lot more economical when you get a class of 12. And that's a real issue for small schools, is that you're not elastic in terms of your salary schedule. You're not elastic in terms of staffing. Anyway.
So for the oil and everything else, we use Bard Energy.
Okay.
That's who was the lowest bidder, and that's who we have as of now. He does fuel oil, bus, diesel, and the propane.
Is what it is. So what else we got, Liz?
I'm all set and yeah.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
Andy, I sent you the slide because I had, since Flora inputted this information, I added some things. So if you could open up the one that I emailed you, that would be great.
I would say, after we hear from Angela, I'd like to come back to staffing, because some of the staffing affects both buildings.
Yeah.
And so that would be
Yes,
useful.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. I see you're on it.
And for the 3 or 4 people who are currently have nothing else going on in their lives and are paying attention, thank you for doing so. But, this is still all very preliminary stuff. We're looking at
Absolutely.
chunks of a budget and trying to be as transparent about the whole picture as possible. And usually what has happened is a month before we have to approve the budget, we have 2 meetings. Everybody complains about the amount of money, take some nominal item up, let's cut it by 2%, without having any idea what it means. And then you get the budget. And of course, taxpayers would like to know, are their boards actually paying attention? So tonight, as an example, are trying to show you that, yeah, actually we are paying attention and we're going through this in a much more organic way. But that also means that everything isn't as pretty, as cut and dried, and there's holes. So with that in mind, let's not ask, let's assume that this is still incomplete stuff. You're up, Angela.
Thank you. So at Grafton next year, we're anticipating 43 students, which is a decrease from, oh, I changed this. Sorry, Flora, this is current. Our current enrollment is 46, so that's down a few, but typically, like Liz had mentioned, more come in. So that's what we know almost a year in advance. Andy, you can go to the next slide. Staffing, we have 4 classroom teachers. We have an art teacher 1 day a week, music teacher twice, library once, PE twice. You can see there. 1 special educator, 2 Title I sort of interventionists, 1 that's funded with Title I and 1 that is locally funded. But as you had mentioned, Cheryl, with Westminster getting full-time librarian, we will need to hire a librarian for a day. So that's something that we'll have to do, sadly. I understand. It's very sad.
Related to that.
Very sad.
Your point 2 art is complementary to the point 8 over here.
Yes.
And so does that work for you, the 1 day a week? Does that work here, 4 days a week? And I know you're recommending Liz full-time library here, and that is what Angela was talking about, needing to hire someone.
Yeah.
How does it work for the art? You're not recommending that consolidation?
So I can speak to it, and then if I miss something. So our librarian that we share does not just do library, right? She does like our farm to school, she does our gardening. She takes on like little community things, like that Name a Plow that just came out. I don't know if you saw that. Like that's something that like she's taking on, so she'll do this like nice project. She also does like our harvest of the month program. And so where with art, that's just strictly art class. So when you ask, is library once a week enough? I'd like it twice a week if I in an ideal world, yes, because that would give that person more time to do those things, because it's sort of split, like half of it's library and then half of it's those other things I had mentioned. So it could be like a day of library, a day of those other things. I can sort of go either way on it. I also know that that's more time out of class, and
I'm even thinking more time for the librarian to connect with your classroom teachers around
and be
tech
in the
and
classroom.
research.
Yep. So
I would think in an ideal world, if you could find someone who is a media specialist, librarian, art person, and you could wrap them all up into one person,
yeah.
then you're not doing a
an arm of this person and a,
Yeah.
you know,
And
a day here,
years
you've
ago,
got
the
you've got
library
someone and
did
they can blend. I mean, that's,
One of the concerns, first, you know, we already have a teacher shortage, finding somebody that's a, you know, a jack of 5 trades simultaneously adds just that little bit of additional pressure finding people. We had argued that shifting from a combined district to individual districts was going to be fairly marginal in terms of impact. It's one of those places where it feels like it might not be. I mean, these are still small amounts, but whatever. And I don't know if we can, if District A can contract with District B or do something that makes it so that, you know, people don't have 2 or 3 paychecks for doing one day here, one day there kind of stuff. But if that's, you know, if there's a way to continue the arrangement that we've had and just have it be finance.
could it be an SU position?
Well, and you brought up one of my favorite, you know, hobby horses, which is that I think that a lot of the sort of point X positions in art, music, library, really ought to be handled at the SU level and assigned out and essentially a chargeback. I think it's a massive headache for administratively to have people split like this. And I think that it's something I would at least ask you all, if not this year, please next year, let's really take a hard look at this.
And I know Rockingham has a couple of folks who do the similar things.
Yeah.
So it might be worth that conversation.
I think that's an SU position, right? Our HCRF is an SU position. That's the only one that we share with.
Correct, but I think what Jack's talking about, and actually had been floated to me by some others, is taking your specialists, your art, your librarians, you know, your PE teachers, and instead of you owning a 0.4 and Liz owning a 0.6, that they're an SU employee and they get 1 check. Because right now they get 2 checks, or they will get 2 checks when the elementary,
Yeah.
Union Elementary divorces.
And you know, we've told people and said, and I hope we believe it, that if anything, the separation of Athens, Grafton from Westminster, not leading to more granularity, but in some ways less, what we'd really like to see is tighter coordination between our soon-to-be 2 districts and Rockingham Elementary as you know, as a team. Yes, there is local accountability to taxpayers and boards, but that operationally it feels very much like a team. I think that is a goal that we've expressed consistently. Easier said than done, I recognize, but what I don't want is the teachers and administrators to be penalized by the fact that we have these rather granular districts. It's really,
rigidity.
that cannot be. And if we start building in rigidity into our programs and building in additional costs because we're being rigid, that's sort of we've violated a guarantee that we made to ourselves as communities. So.
Yeah, and I think that the thing we would have to work out with Flora, you know, like work out, is making sure if something was at the SU level, that it wasn't part of the SU assessment. And then also, you know, because you don't want to assess it out to the other buildings and then have to try and pull that money back and then do the money. Like, we just have, that's an accounting piece that would just.
Good thinking, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, just putting it out there. So let's continue on with this.
And then capital improvements, I sort of drew a line because I wasn't sure, I didn't think that counted as capital improvement. So painting the entire school, I know that we've talked about this, repairing the outside cafeteria wall. Jack, you seem to know more a little bit about that. I added it on here because you had mentioned it. But if we were able to put an air handling system in that wall, then potentially it could be an Esser
Two problems solved
swing,
simultaneously.
yep. Replacing some of the fluorescent light bulbs, like in our special education classroom, especially. We do have some rotten windows that could be replaced. So the door access, door control systems and the fobs, there was a gentleman out, I think it was from telecom.com. Is the name of it? For some reason, I'm like spacing on the name, but he was doing some repairs with our phones because our caller ID was like coming up incorrectly. It was coming up like Jamaica or something. And that, he fixed it. It got fixed. I was like, I can't make calls to parents and have it say that it's Jamaica. That's not gonna work. That's not accurate. So he came and he was actually able to fix it. He was there all day. And then as he was leaving, he was like, we also do blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, do you? So he's gonna write up a quote. But just through chatting, he said, maybe like 5,000. So I put in 7 because, so what this would allow, just for more information, is, so what it would be is our external, so there's 2 doors. So the outside door would have the key and you would still use a key, but the second door would have like you would swipe your card, or you could put in your PIN numbers. Like if you lost your card, you could have your PIN. And it would like say, we would know who was in the building when they were in the building. And we already have the cameras, and it is close enough that we wouldn't have to install like another camera on that front door, because the one that's right above the main office is a very clear view of that.
There's also some very off-the-shelf stuff, Ring, Google, some of these other outfits that put some of that out and do with checking out and doing sort of contrasting there. I think these are great, but I would again suggest there's 2 approaches to solving some of this. One is what stuff we can do via Esser. And other stuff, take a hard look, and again, I'm going to seek Jim DeBell on you, and I want you to be fairly, aggressive.
I don't have any more room on this slide.
Well, that's fine, but I'm just saying that walk through this stuff, because there is a point, and this is true for both of you. There is a point where we've not put, well, you put money in because of the gem and all that stuff that you did a while ago, and that was a big project. But in terms of just sort of big old traditional, 15 years have passed, it's time to do the renovation. That hasn't happened. I would know about it because I would have been part of that process.
Right.
So, if you are looking at something that looks more like a bond than out of general money, sit with him and figure that out, because that's,
I mean, like our like driveway needs to be
like
repaved,
painting the building, we don't do that every year.
What is that?
Painting the building, you don't do it every year, and that's 20 grand done. And you'll be lucky if you get it done for that.
Yeah.
So, the driveway, it's 6 figures, and it's a higher 6 figure than you think it is. So, if that's what you're looking at, let's, figure out if it's a this year, if it's a next year, because you got to get bids and all the rest of it, and is it capital? Because if it's a capital thing, maybe it's, I'd kind of like it to wait a year, because, we've said it's not going to be a big fiscal impact. Hardy Merrill says so. And then we come in with, $600,000 of facility improvements that need to get done. I want to make sure that we've really got our ducks in a row. And if we need it, we ask for it, because I'm not going to have buildings that are decrepit just because we're scared to ask people to have decent facilities.
And on that, like the same thing we're talking about with technology and having a 5-year plan. I think we need to build them out on all of our facilities. And I've talked with Jim DeBell about this, of having a plan that's living, that is up like anyone could go look and see what is our plan, what are we trying to do? Because just looking at this, so, Jim and I and Ricky, we have had conversations about looking at a all-in-one system that works with our copiers, but also works as your ID badge, and then works as your fob to get into a building. And so we don't want you to run out and do that, because if we're going to do something SU-wide, that's an all-in-one system that we can control from one station, that then allows us to do that. It gives us a more global understanding of when people are coming in buildings and doing those things. But then I also see down here, you have like the potential of reconfiguring the front entry, right? Don't want to invest money on a door and then
Rip it out.
the next year we're going to rip it out and we're going to move the door. So having that plan, that's one of the things I've noticed that we just don't have is those hard physical plans. It's up here in people's heads. They got great ideas and they need to be done. We need to have it out there. So
some of this, again, I've talked about how with our policies, they sort of, like 3 years of work magically disappeared. We did have some of this, I promise you. And it again is just disappeared in the ether. So we need to have it in multiple places. The old lots of copies keep stuff safe rule applies, and we need to, and it should be available on the web, should be available to all of our building staff. But in many, like I say, in many ways, but it should be standard. And to the extent that we can, we want, from the perspective of the superintendent, to look like a school district, one big school district. From the perspective of individual districts, to look like it's their district. To the extent that we can do that, we should.
yes, I agree.
All righty.
The only other thing to touch on about the front bathrooms is once we no longer need an isolation room, because we've taken out the urinal in the men's room and then made the other bathroom just a gender neutral bathroom and change the lock so you could lock yourself in there for privacy. But the men's bathroom is like no longer, it's an isolation room.
Yeah.
So we'll need that to function as a bathroom.
You get some funky stuff in the interior of that building that is just, we've talked about it for 8 years and we can actually come up with a solution. And let's take no or wait for next year for an answer. So at least have a plan. If we don't get all done this year, at least we know what we're doing.
Right. And then just getting some dumpsters, and I have one estimate, but I want to get another one from who we currently use. And my custodian was working on that. So I don't think it's going to be I think with all things considered, I don't think it's going to be a number that's going to bother anything. If we can just move money from one line that we don't use and move it over.
Well, everything here kind of sense. I don't have an area. I actually hope, speaking entirely for myself, not for my colleagues, because I think this is what I wanted somebody to do finally, and so we've got this, and thank you for that. So this is extremely helpful. It says, here's stuff we need to get done, fill the schedule, see how much it needs to be done now, see how much of it needs to be done via Esser, see how much of it we're just going to have to either write a bond or do something to get it accomplished. I'm in favor of that. I want to look at the item below your dotted line. Playground, we ripped out the playground, and I've heard more about that than I've heard about anything we've done in a very long time. Not all positive. I do need somebody to give me some sort of swag number. If we're going to go, if I'm going to go out with a tin cup or whatever it is we're going to do to fix this, we need to, and people have asked me, what do you need to place it? What is your vision? Is it traditional playground like the one back here? is it a playground like the one that the Nature Museum put in, their big treehouse thing? You know, what is it you need so we can have some idea of what you're looking for? If it turns out to be an off-budget, community-supported item, we're still going to need some numbers, and maybe they don't have to be part of the budget process, but I really wouldn't mind if we got it done for the ground flows solid.
Get something in before the ground floor.
Well, I don't know if that's going to be possible, but at least know what it's going to cost before the ground.
I have been told since before I ripped it out that I didn't rip it out, but we had it removed since it failed the inspection, but
Angela ripped it out.
ripped it out. That it could be funded with Esser money. And so
Yeah,
we're just being patient for us to use this Esser money. In the meantime, there's a lot of other things that the kids can play on.
Yeah.
I know that it was suggested maybe we could do a temporary sort of playground, and that's where one of my teachers is going to talk to the Nature Museum about potentially collaborating with us and getting something that we can have temporarily.
That would be great. But you know, the Esser thing came from a preceding administration, and it was one of those things that raised a lot of eyebrows when people were concerned there was some fast and loose playing with Esser funding. And I just want to say, you know, if we can do it, if it's legitimate, we can do it via Esser. I have no objection, but I really suspect that this is going to require community support project, and that's how the last three were built. And I think the one here was built partly. Wasn't there some fundraising involved with that? I'm pretty sure there was. Okay, I'm pretty sure there was, but since it's been a long time, I don't remember any details, except that's what my impression was.
And I think with Esser funds, if we're reimagining that out, you know, as an outdoor
instruction and recreation.
Like we talked about, if you're looking at like, not that we want to install zip lines and things like that, but like, but some of those outdoor, kind of courses where kids can walk on things, and we're creating it so that kids can do more things with not just a playground. That's when Esser funds can start to really be tapped in.
I would celebrate that level of imagination put into this process, and if that's if that's kind of hybrid instruction and recreation space, that actually makes a lot of sense, and then you can start using the E word.
Yeah, I think all these things that we talk about, like that's how we have to think about it, is not just as we want to put a classroom in. It's like how does it have multiple uses in all this flexibility of learning that we're moving towards, right? And so that it's just it's a new way of thinking.
Even metal seats outside with a instruction space built in as part of the process, and a place to make stuff that can loudly blow up, as I used to say when I taught physics.
Sodium, you drop it in water.
Boom, loved it. Actually did it too. That's those kind of things might make that work. And again,
metal seats are cold though, Jeff.
My kid was in elementary school, and there was this structure in the public school. It's a big, brilliant red frame with blue wires going all over the place. It looked incredibly dangerous, but somehow or other these things existed in schoolyards, unsupervised, and they were. I mean, I'm sure they would meet the requirement of challenge for kids. But it was really dangerous but wonderful thing to have. So beautiful too, huge.
The only concern thinking about like the nature playground is insurance. I wanted to contact VisVet about that because I know what their other report said and how specific everything was, that I don't know that we could build something, like when I was looking into getting the previous playground repaired, nobody wanted to do it because it would fall on their, it would be like a weird insurance thing. So I don't know that we can like put things out there. I don't know if,
It's not as easy as I'm making it sound. I understand that. I mean, my wife works in the insurance industry and I know that runs a lot of, I understand what you're saying. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I
not just like, oh, let's just go with those costs, right? Like,
yeah, I don't,
there's a lot that goes into that.
It's also when we went to Visbit and the state-based system rather than going to Richard's group and working something out. We got a different type of situation. It's added a lot of additional inflexibility in the system.
so if that's,
Yeah, Bisbit audit us every year. We
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want to put something in that they'll be like, okay, you're not passing inspection, we can't insure
Yeah, oh,
Right.
we all had that
the
warning.
playground.
So anything else we got?
She's got more slides.
You got more slides? That's not her slide.
so the technology that's coming out, right, Ricky?
All right.
And then we have tuition,
Yeah.
12th, 7th, and 8th grade students.
Oh.
I used the numbers that were from Liz's slide, so.
Well,
First
you know,
mistake.
Uh,
No, I think I think I used I think it's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I don't have what Liz had where there was like the column with the yellow and the gray. I can have that for you.
We'll
Um,
ask you about your salary story.
Thanks. Laura, do you want to talk about salaries?
Salaries is still the same thing as for Westminster.
Okay, so these are all get the 1.5.
Yes,
on
And
wheel.
then FY23,
Yeah.
the 1.5% that was allocated in FY22.
And you're looking at a enrollment that's down what kind of percent from last year? Just, I know. that
3
it-
less than
Huh?
this year.
Yeah.
3 less students.
When they get, schools get this small, it's a little silly to be, asking about that kind of stuff. So again, I said,
Benefits is still the same thing
Yeah.
as well, the 10% increase.
yeah, great.
And then her miscellaneous, Angela review her miscellaneous. So her idea is to have her miscellaneous expenses level funded. She mentioned that she wants to analyze a little bit more per line.
Yeah, don't be too eager to do that, just saying, we got a 5, if everything you buy is gonna cost between 5 and 7% more next year, and, well, right there, you've got some idea as to what you're getting yourself into, so.
But we had asked all the principals to try and get as close to a level funded budget, or come under.
Yeah,
To start with, and
Okay.
so I think that I agree, goods are gonna cost more next year. If we can keep things level, it just means we might not be able to buy as many boxes of paper kind of thing, but, and if
I just caution about, crimping on maintenance and supplies, because it's a favorite thing to do, and it ends up, and you end up with teachers buying their own paper, and I'm just not, I don't want.
No, I agree, and I think we don't want to get into that situation. But I think, that was our ask kind of going into this, is to
Okay.
kind of be as flat as possible, because again, to come in with, it's been a tough year, taxes have been tough, and then, a lot of people haven't been working, and then to come in and have, a large increase is going to be that sticker shock. And then we get into the argument of clawing back money, and then let's try and make some tougher choices early.
Okay.
So,
I support my
but we can add money into the
I support-
budget,
I
Jack,
support
that's
my-
fine.
Angela,
There you
that's
go.
6%
I support
more.
my administration's goal.
I bet teachers would like to have that add-on on
Yeah,
their
well,
supplies
I-
the next year.
Tell them you got a choice between a salary increase and more supplies. Let's see how that flies. All right. All right, very good. Anything else?
That's it.
This was really helpful.
Very much so, thank you both.
I know, Angela, you were concerned, and I know both were concerned that we were pushing you to do some of this a little earlier than we have in the past. But getting a grasp at what the least base level, issues are.
Thanks to Flora and Andy also.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think honestly, kudos to Liz. I wouldn't put it better when I saw whatever she gave to us. I was like, okay, I share it with all the other principals as well. I was like, this will be good for all the boards
And I've
to
said
have a
that, you know,
clear view.
that, you know, if you're gonna manage building, you're gonna manage anything. The state and our favorite e-finance system does what it does, but, you know, it'll never hurt anybody to build your own Excel spreadsheet. It just never does. And I can see some of that's happened here, and I'm all for that. It just makes everybody's life easier.
The other thing that I wanted to just report on is there was the Wreath Grant that I had learned about in September when I met with Flora and Andy originally. Here it is. That I guess it was awarded in 2019. It had old people's names on it, previous employees who had applied for this and got it. But it had to be used by September 30th. And I think I found out about it on like September 18th or something. Like I didn't even have 2 weeks to throw it together, but we did. And we got new furniture. So it was a very last minute thing. Thank you, Flora.
I think we finished everything the same day.
That on September 30th, it was like noon on September 30th that it was like finally there. But so just so.
Well,
There's gonna
the
be-
thing is that everything that we had to back up on the purchase and everything had to be dated by the 30th.
Yeah.
You know, even if we get it delivered afterwards. So that was the stressful part, not losing the funds. But Angela worked on that one fast. That was really, really good and
It's
and a
always,
great
it's always,
win.
yeah, it's always good when you get grant money and you don't have to leave it on the table. That's,
Right.
you know, and you're not just spending it just to spend, but you're getting something you can use too. So
Absolutely.
that's-
Well, we are now at the time of the program where we do announce the date and location of the next meeting. And it will be October 28th, 6 o'clock at the Grafton Elementary School. And without objection, I'm hoping. And now we're on the director's comments, and I've done all the talking, so everybody else can comment.
I just thank everyone for coming and presenting the information. Thanks.
I just want to thank both the principals for all that work you put into that and into everything else you do. So thank you.
Carolyn? I think I'll add, I'll check into a little bit about the liability insurance and the issues, because I do have access to that kind of universe of how are people doing it, and how are they making sure insurance is not an issue. So I'll get back to you guys about that as well. And anyway, again, thank you both, and thank you, as it was a productive meeting, and so thanks, everybody. We have a good start on the budget planning process. Thank you.
Greatly appreciated. Just identified your challenges, identified some things that I'm hoping that the administration will be looking at in terms of, you know, consolidation, unification stuff that will help a ton. Rethought what I thought was going to be a problem for the playground, a way that's been bugging me. And thank you for letting me think differently about that. And generally, there's good stuff all the way around. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Beck TV, as always.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thanks to our cameraman, and thanks to everybody else in the show.
Check on anything else.
Yep.
This
done.
video,
We're done, right?
We are done. I am adjourning, all in favor of adjourning the meeting,
Survey,
get
I
up.
probably got it, and then I just pointed it out, but is there any other way of-
7:29.
7:29.